a hermeneutic phenomenological reflection. The teacher as Hermes, guide between worlds. When I contemplate the meaning of being a teacher, I find myself drawn to the enigmatic figure of Hermes, the ancient messenger of the gods, guide of souls, traveler between worlds, and keeper of thresholds. There is something profoundly evocative in this image. Hermes does not belong entirely to one world. He moves between them. He carries messages across distances, interprets what is hidden, opens pathways between what appears separated, and accompanies souls from one threshold to another. Perhaps in a similar way, the teacher inhabits the space between what is known and what is yet to be understood. The teacher stands at the threshold of knowledge not as one who possesses all truth, but as one who has learned how to accompany another person toward it. To be a teacher is therefore to become a bridge. There are chasms that exist between a question and an answer, between confusion and understanding, between experience and meaning. The teacher does not simply remove these chasms. Rather, the teacher patiently helps the student cross them. Like Hermes, carrying messages between the gods and humanity, the teacher carries knowledge from the world of accumulated human understanding into the lived world of the learner. Yet this transmission is never merely mechanical. Knowledge must be interpreted. A concept must be translated into something the student can encounter, question, understand, and eventually make one's own. The teacher is therefore not merely a messenger of knowledge. The teacher is an interpreter of meaning. The teacher at the threshold. Hermes is a figure of thresholds. He belongs to roads, crossings, boundaries, transitions, and passages. His significance lies not simply in where he stands, but in his ability to move between places. The teacher likewise exists in a space of transition. A student enters the classroom carrying one understanding of the world and leaves, hopefully, with another. Between these two moments lies the mysterious work of education. The teacher accompanies the student across that threshold, but the teacher cannot cross it for the student. This is perhaps one of the most beautiful paradoxes of teaching. The teacher can explain, demonstrate, question, encourage, challenge, and guide, but understanding itself must ultimately happen within the learner. A teacher may point toward the horizon, but the student must learn to see. A teacher may open the door, but the student must choose to enter. A teacher may illuminate the path, but the student must eventually walk it. In this sense, teaching is fundamentally an act of accompaniment. The messenger who does not simply deliver Hermes is commonly remembered as a messenger. Yet the metaphor becomes deeper when we consider what it means to deliver a message. A message is not meaningful merely because it has been spoken. It must be understood. The teacher therefore faces a task far more demanding than delivering information. The teacher must translate. Scientific knowledge must be translated into accessible language. Philosophy must be translated into questions that can be lived. History must be translated from dates and events into human experience. Mathematics must become more than symbols. Literature must become an encounter with the human condition. The teacher continually asks, how can this truth become meaningful to this particular person? This is where the teacher becomes hermeneutical. The teacher interprets the subject while simultaneously interpreting the learner. The same lesson may mean something entirely different to different students because each student approaches the classroom with a different history, imagination, fear, culture, and horizon of understanding. Thus, teaching is never simply, here is the knowledge. It is, let us discover what this knowledge means in your world. The teacher as guide of souls. The ancient image of Hermes as a guide of souls offers an even deeper understanding of the teacher. Education is ultimately concerned not only with what a person knows, but with who that person becomes. A teacher may teach grammar, mathematics, science, theology, history, or technology. But beneath every discipline lies a more fundamental question. What kind of human being is this knowledge helping the student become? The teacher guides not merely the intellect, but consciously or unconsciously, the formation of the person. A teacher who encourages curiosity teaches the student to remain open. A teacher who allows questions teaches intellectual courage. A teacher who welcomes mistakes teaches humility. A teacher who listens teaches the dignity of being heard. A teacher who believes in a struggling student teaches that human worth is greater than performance. In this sense, the teacher becomes a guide of souls, not by controlling the student's destiny, but by helping the student discover the possibility of becoming more fully human. The elusive Hermes and the humility of the teacher. There is something particularly fitting about describing Hermes as elusive. The best teacher is not always the one who occupies the center. Sometimes the teacher must disappear. A teacher speaks so that eventually the student can think independently. A teacher guides so that eventually the student can navigate alone. A teacher provides answers so that eventually the student learns how to formulate better questions. The teacher's influence may therefore be greatest when it becomes invisible. Years after leaving the classroom, a student may suddenly remember a question asked by a teacher, a word of encouragement, or a particular way of seeing the world. The teacher may no longer be physically present, yet the voice remains. The guide has become part of the student's inner world. Perhaps this is another way in which the teacher resembles Hermes. The messenger passes through, delivers what must be delivered, opens a pathway, and continues on the journey. The message remains even when the messenger is gone. To call the teacher a conduit of knowledge is to recognize that education happens through relationship. The teacher becomes a bridge between generations. Through the teacher, the wisdom of those who came before reaches those who will come after. Ideas that took centuries to develop may be encountered by a student in a single classroom. Questions asked by ancient philosophers may suddenly become the questions of a young person today. Discoveries made by scientists long ago become the starting point for another generation. Stories written by people who have already died continue to speak through the living. The teacher stands in the middle of this immense human conversation. The teacher receives, the teacher interprets, the teacher transmits, and then the teacher watches as students take what they have received and carry it somewhere the teacher may never see. Thus, teaching becomes an act of generational communion. The gentle guidance of Hermes. Hermes does not represent a guide who drags the traveler toward a predetermined destination. The metaphor suggests something gentler. The teacher guides, the teacher accompanies, the teacher points, the teacher waits. There are moments when teaching requires authority, correction, and discipline. But beneath these must remain a profound respect for the freedom of the learner. The teacher cannot possess the student's journey. The teacher can only accompany it. This makes teaching an exercise in humility. The teacher must recognize that the student is not an empty vessel waiting to be filled. The student already possesses a world of experience, questions, perceptions, and possibilities. The teacher enters that world carefully. Like Hermes crossing between worlds, the teacher learns to move between the world of the discipline and the world of the student. And somewhere in that crossing, understanding becomes possible. On being a teacher, perhaps then, to be a teacher is to become a kind of Hermes. Not literally a messenger of gods, but a messenger between worlds of understanding, between ignorance and knowledge, between question and insight, between childhood and maturity, between experience and meaning, between what has been inherited and what must still be discovered. The teacher stands at these thresholds, and perhaps the deepest vocation of teaching is not to make students dependent upon the teacher's wisdom, but to give them enough light to continue their journey when the teacher is no longer beside them. The teacher is a bridge, but bridges are meant to be crossed. The teacher is a messenger, but messages are meant to be received, interpreted, and carried forward. The teacher is a guide of souls, but every soul must ultimately find its own path. And so when I contemplate the enigmatic Hermes, I begin to understand the mystery of teaching. The teacher is the one who stands between worlds, carrying knowledge across the chasms of understanding, interpreting what is difficult to grasp, opening doors that students did not know existed, and gently accompanying them toward horizons they could not yet see. Perhaps this is the quiet greatness of the teacher. Not to be the destination, not to be the center, but to become the messenger, bridge, and guide through whom another human being discovers a world that was waiting to be understood.